video, we're going to explore 3 different ways instructors can organize their course materials in Canvas, our campus learning management system. Now, these aren't the only 3 ways that you can organize materials, but I'd say that these are the 3 primary ways that instructors create organizational pathways for their students through whatever course content they choose to have posted in their Canvas course sites. I'd like to start by talking about these 3 different ways to organize Canvas when instructors are new to Canvas, because it helps instructors make choices about how they want their students to engage with the course materials. In other words, starting with organization helps us to center the student experience as we consider the utility of Canvas for our class learning environments. So, shall we dive in? You're looking at a course site that I've built using the Modules tool. As you can see, in this organizational pathway, course content is organized into several chunks of information. In this case, the pieces of information that students will access are organized according to the week and the day that the students will need to access those particular resources. In other words, I have modules here organized in a form that looks a little bit like a live syllabus, because it's functioning as a calendar with the information that students will need access to embedded according to the day and the week that they'll be using those resources. You can see at the top that I have a module that just has some standard information that students would need throughout the quarter, including the link to the course syllabus, some guidelines and some expectations. But beyond that point, students would go through day by day, week by week, to see what they need to find for in-class and out-of-class activities. This is not the only way to organize content using the Modules tool. Here's another example that I've mocked up, though this is obviously not from a real course like the first example I showed you. But I've organized this set of modules by the resources included. So there's a module for the assignment sheets, a module for in-class activities, a module for assignment submissions to links to where the students would submit their final work. So that should be another way to approach using the Modules tool. I would recommend using the Modules tool if you're planning to have students interact or access many of the materials in Canvas across many of the different tools on the left-hand toolbar. As you probably noticed from the example from a real course, there are different icons that are next to the items inside each module, which represent the file type of the items in the module itself. This icon, for example, of the chain link represents that this item comes from an outside link, whereas this icon that looks a bit like a piece of paper is referring to the fact that this is a page directly embedded into modules. We'll talk more about pages in just a moment, whereas this icon of a paperclip represents a file download or an attachment that the students might access. So if you think you're going to be using a lot of the different pieces of functionality across Canvas, Modules makes aggregating those pieces a little bit easier for your students to find, especially if you're putting them into a linear order, so that your students aren't having to dip in and out of different tools. They have everything organized into one pathway. And using the Modules tool is pretty easy, but because the Modules tool is an aggregate, you'll notice that when you start building out a module, you'll have access via a drop-down menu to adding pieces from across your Canvas site, whether it's a file that you might upload with a particular reading assignment, a page with a class activity you might want to embed, a link to an external URL if you want to direct students to an outside website or a Google Doc for them to work in. All these components will allow you to create the linear aggregated organization of information as you see here. I won't get into more technical details about how to build a module for this particular video, but in the liner notes for this video, I'll include a few links to Canvas's official documentation on how to build modules. Otherwise, you can also make an appointment with me, and I can help you build content in modules too. This is an example of a site that uses pages to organize course content. You'll notice that a page is basically just a blank space for instructors to fill in with text, embedded images, although there's none in this example, and links. A lot of instructors will use pages if they like to design handouts that break down information for their students, but want that information directly embedded onto the home page or directly embedded into the Canvas ecosystems. In other words, a page could just as easily be a Word document or an external website, but in this case, the page is just directly accessible through Canvas and does not require any external download or moving to another place on the web. What instructors tend to like about pages is that they're highly customizable. The back end of a page looks like this. You'll see that it has a space you can fill in the header. This is just a rich text editor. You could also toggle this editor to be in HTML if you so choose. So there's a lot of customizability here. It's really up to you what you want pages to look like. Pages can also be a great portal to other parts of your site. So if we can look at another example over on my Sandbox page, you could have, for example, your embedded pages. Looks like my images aren't loading. These could be links to other parts of the course site or to outside websites. So you could sort of make pages function a little bit like modules if you want to break away from the linearity of the module structure, or if images or video are a really important component of your course content. I should note that the syllabus tool, what I'm pulling up now, is basically a type of page that you can organize too. So as you can see in this syllabus page here, I've customized it pretty heavily to create a grid that would potentially direct students to some of these sort of essential components of the Canvas course site. And I'm happy to show you how to do this if you like this kind of organizational structure. But the only real difference here between the syllabus tool and the pages tool is that the assignments automatically populate at the bottom of the page in this section called Course Summary. So that's just something to keep in mind, that if you want to use the syllabus functionality as your homepage for your course site, or if you want to organize things around the syllabus functionality, if you create assignment submissions in the assignments tool, those will appear at the bottom of the page automatically, and there's no way to get rid of those. So these are just some choices you'll want to think about. Again, the technical functionality of these pages is pretty easy. The back end of the syllabus page, you can see, looks a lot like the back end of the pages page. But if you want to get into more of the technical specifics of this, I'm going to include the Canvas instructional content on how to use and build content in pages in the liner notes for this video as well. Right now, you're seeing what the Files tool in Canvas looks like on the user or the student end. And this probably looks pretty familiar to most of you watching this video. The Files tool is basically just a file cabinet of all the documents you want your students to access. So basically, if you only want to see your Canvas course site as a way for students to access documents like the syllabus, the assignment sheets, and the readings, then the Files tool may really be all that you need. Relying on files will not necessarily foster student engagement or student collaboration, but it will make it pretty easy for students just to download whatever it is that you want to share with them. So I would recommend using the Files tool if you want to use Canvas in a relatively lightweight way for your course. Aggregating information by different folders and files is fine if you want your students primarily working offline or in word processors. If you're having students do a lot online, it can be a little cumbersome for them to download individual files from the Files tool for each set of activity instructions or for each sort of in-class engagement. So I'd say that organizing information by files is probably sort of the lowest touch intervention an instructor can include. So I'm not going to get into technical details of using the Files tool here, but if you've attached a document to an email, you will know how to upload a file to this Files tool. The only real difference here is that Canvas automatically asks instructors to categorize the files they upload by license type. So I'll leave the student view for a moment so you can see what I mean by that. So if you try to upload a new file, for example, I'll just upload the screenshot. You'll see as it's loading, right, that there's this red exclamation point. If you click that, you see that you'll have to choose first to publish it, right? And you can toggle between different visibility options in your Files tool as well. But you also have to select the usage right. So For most of our instructors, they can probably categorize what they're using as subject to fair use exception, or in the public domain, or licensed under Creative Commons. If you have questions about what usage right your material falls under, let me know. I'm happy to walk you through these options, but you do have to select usage rights before you can publish your content. But once you save it, it should be visible to your students on their end of the Files tool as well. I hope that learning about these 3 different ways of organizing your Canvas content was helpful. I'm happy to follow up if you'd like to explore these options in greater depth together.